Hi everyone, welcome back to my latest tutorial. So this week I wanted to share something that I've kind of shared in the past, but in a different format. So I've shared how to make repeat patterns in Affinity Designer on the iPad, and I've also shared how to make repeat patterns on Affinity Designer and Affinity Photo for the desktop. But those videos were, some of them were a little bit more detailed, some of them were a little bit quicker, specifically the Affinity Photo one, because it was a part of a preview that I did for a Skillshare class. So this week I want to do a little bit more of an in-depth tutorial on how to make a repeat pattern tile using Affinity Photo on your iPad. So to get started, let's jump right into our software. So we are going to be using the Affinity Photo app on the iPad. So I'm just going to launch my app. I'm going to get us to our main menu. So when you are in Affinity Photo, if you haven't worked on a project or if you haven't worked on anything in here yet, you're not going to see much. But I have a ton of different little projects that I've been working on over the last few months. So I do have a bunch of stuff in here, but what we're going to do is we're going to set up a new file. So up in our upper right hand corner, there will be this little plus button. We're going to click on that plus button and it's going to take us to this new document menu. So we're just going to select new document and we are going to change our sizing. So you can change it to pixels or you can keep it in inches. In order to do this, on the left hand side underneath our document menu, you'll see something that says inches or pixels or whatever it might be on your iPad. Right now mine says inches, but you can change things to pixels as well. Points, inches, yards, whatever it is you're working in. So I'm going to select inches. I'm going to keep everything in RGB. You can choose RGB 8 or 16, or you could also do CMYK if you're planning on printing this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my dimensions to a square. So I'm going to click on my width and I'm just going to do 6 inches by 6 inches. And then I'm going to keep everything at 300 dpi and then hit OK. And then what I want to do is make sure I have transparent background selected. So this allows me to create like a bitmap that doesn't have a background in it, so we can basically place that repeat tile on any kind of color. And then hit OK. So what you'll see is you have a nice square workboard to work on. On the left hand side is going to be your tools, and then on the right hand side are going to be your studios, and up here is your main menu bar. If you click on this little question mark at the bottom, it'll give you a pop-up with all of the different tools that you have access to here in Affinity Photo. We're mostly going to be working in the Layer Studio and our Color Studio. We'll be utilizing our Filter Studio as well because we are going to be using the affine function to create our repeat. And then we will be utilizing some of our tools over here, like our move tool, our color picker tool, our paintbrush, erase brush, things like that. You could choose, if you wanted, to just start drawing in Affinity Photo. Personally, I already have some elements that I want to use in order to keep this tutorial not too long, but if you wanted, you could utilize any of these tools here to create little elements that would make up your print. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this right hand panel, our studios. So if we go to our color studio over here, what we're going to do is click on our color, that little circle, and then we're just going to change it to black for now, just so that it's easy to see on the screen. And then on our left hand side, and then you can click on the color again and it'll pull it back into it. If you go to the left hand side of your screen, you select the paintbrush tool. You have options that pop up here that allow you to change the size, the opacity, and then if you go to your paintbrush studio over here on the right hand side, you'll have all of these different brushes you can utilize. If you click on where it says basic, you can scroll down to different options. If you want something that has more texture, you can select something like acrylics or dry media or engraving. I think I'm just going to go with the acrylics for now and then select this gradual acrylic cotton paper 2 brush. What we'll do is we'll go to our layers panel over here, the Layer Studio on the right hand side. It's the top option, and if we click the little plus icon, it'll allow us to create a new layer. So we're just going to select pixel layer. We can just kind of like test this out on screen so you can see what it looks like, and it gives you this really lovely like textured brush effect that I think is really fantastic. And keep in mind, Affinity Photo, just like something like Procreate or Adobe Photoshop, is a raster-based program. So that means that everything is created with pixels. So if you try to like increase the size of something beyond what it was originally created for, it can pixelate it. So just make sure that whatever you're working on, make sure you make the file as big as possible. It's always easier to size something down than it is to size it up. To undo, you just double tap with your finger and it'll remove whatever is on your screen. But you can use these options at the bottom to actually decrease the size of your brush. So you can either drag left or drag right to increase or decrease these options, like your width, the opacity, the flow, hardness. Or you can click on them and then you'll get this little pop-up and you can actually change the pixels and the size by hand. What's nice is, like I said, this is very much like Adobe Photoshop or any kind of like Procreate drawing app. You can draw within the actual app and use your Apple Pencil just as you would to create elements. And you can also utilize your flood fill tool to color things in. And then also you can do just quick sketches and then always make a layer above to refine what you're doing. If you click on this erase brush, you'll be able to erase any parts of the element that you don't want. And then if you click on the flood fill tool, you'll be able to fill anything that isn't an enclosed space. So what we're going to do is just select a color, any color right now. I'm going to select this blue. And we can fill the middle of this circle. Make sure you have your flood fill tool on and you can just tap into it and it will fill your circle. You can also adjust the tolerance here by just, again, you can drag left or right over the tolerance, or you can click on it and adjust it there. But the thing to keep in mind is that your element has to have completely closed lines or else it'll flood outside of what you've drawn. So for example here, this line isn't closed. So if I go to flood fill this area, it will likely fill outside of my drawing. So let's try that. And then what happens is that it fills the entire canvas. So to undo that, just double tap with your fingers. So you can utilize this just as you would something like Procreate, utilize layers, do a rough sketch underneath, refine on top to start creating your elements for your repeat. But I do suggest that for how I'm creating this particular repeat, keep everything to the center and make sure it doesn't touch the edges. But what I've done already is created some sketches. They're very simple, rough sketches of some floral elements that I want to utilize, and I created these all here in Affinity Photo, just utilizing like an ink brush, and then I did some fast sketches and then I filled elements in. So what I want to do is take some of these elements and create a repeat out of it. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to use this leaf pattern, the second cell leaf pattern, this flower here, and then this black and white flower here. So I have all of these elements on their own separate layers. So what I can do is select each one individually and then copy them so that I can pull them into the new file. So to select multiples, just click on your first and then you'll know it's selected because you'll have a blue outline, and then hold your finger down on your screen and then select the rest of your elements. And then once you've selected all the pieces that you want, you can go into your top menu here and select your 3-dot menu, and then you're going to go to your pasteboard and you're going to select copy. And then you're going to go back out into your gallery by hitting that little back arrow button, and then you're going to go into the new file. And if you didn't have elements already, that's fine. This is just how I do it. If I created elements in a separate page, you can of course just create it in your current file as well. But then I'm going to go back into my original file that I created, select my 3-dot menu, go to pasteboard, and then select paste. And then it's going to paste all of the elements. You may not be able to see them because they might be bigger. So what I just do is I make sure everything's in there. I select my move tool, and then I just move everything where I need it to be. And then I can just select items individually as well. So when it comes to creating a repeat tile, the idea is to kind of like, you're creating like a puzzle. In something like Affinity Photo, I'm able to like create another artboard that allows me to directly see what I'm creating. But for Affinity Photo, it's a little different because you're not working in artboards, you're working in files. So what we need to do is create the repeat, and then we'll test it out on a bigger artboard within the app. We are going to be using what is called the affine function. And basically what it does is it takes whatever's in the center of your artboard and it pulls it to your four corners, and then we can rebuild the elements in the center. So what I find is important is that whatever you add to this, you don't want it to go too close to your edges. So you want to keep everything in the center. So I have these elements that I've already created, and what I like to do is basically just kind of copy them and paste them and rearrange them on my artboard as I need. So starting in my center, I'm gonna actually copy this flower again. So I'm gonna select that layer, I'm gonna go to my three-dot menu, I'm gonna select duplicate, and you'll see that it'll duplicate the element, and I can drag it out, and then I can rotate it as I need it and just kind of play around with the placement so that it feels like it fits well with what I'm doing. I'm going to select this other leaf pattern here. I'm going to click on it, and if you find you're having trouble actually clicking on things, what you can also do is go to your layers and then just select that layer, and then go into your three-dot menu, select duplicate, and then you can move it again. And then what I like to do is I don't want things to feel too like perfect, so I like to rotate things and move them around so that it feels more like it's scattered versus like always facing the same direction. Then I'm going to select this little flower here, go to my three-dot menu, hit duplicate, and then move it where I'd like it next. And then what I'm noticing is that things are getting a little too close up here. So what I'm going to do is select my move tool on the left hand side, drag over my entire artboard so that all of my elements are selected, and then I'm just going to pull it so that it's more centered. Once I've done that, I think I'm going to copy this floral element one more time and see if it makes sense to place it anywhere. And you can also resize things as well. They don't all always have to be the same size. To resize, all you have to do is pull in from your corners and then rotate them using that little top arm that sticks out of your frame, and then it has a little circle on it. You can just click on that and it allows you to rotate your elements. I'm just going to continue doing this so that I have everything that I want filled out within my center, and then we'll get to the next step of actually pulling things into our corners. Alright, once I have all of the elements that I want, I can now group everything together and make a copy of it. I do this because I want to make sure that I have all of these elements in a format that I can go back into and edit. What we're going to do is actually, after we group everything, we're going to flatten it, and this will it'll make creating our affine a little bit easier, but that basically makes it so that we can't edit these elements anymore. So that's why I like to make a copy of everything. So I'm going to select all of these elements, and then I'm going to go into my layers function, and then I am actually going to select group. And if you find that everything doesn't get selected, you could always just go into your layers as well, click on it, click on the first element, and then drag your finger, your Apple Pencil over the next layer to the right, and it'll allow you to select multiple layers. Once I have everything selected, what I'm going to do is hit this little puzzle looking piece up at the top. This is going to group everything for me so that everything can kind of like be moved around together, and it's just easier to handle it. But then what I want to do again is duplicate this group so that I have two of them, and I'm able to edit this first one. Once I've copied this, I'm going to go to the copy of it, and I'm going to uncheck mark it so that you can no longer see it, and then I'm going to go back and click on the original group, and then we're going to go to our layers menu here that allows us to flatten, or merge down are options. It's right next to the three-dot menu in our layers, which is our layers options. It kind of looks like a stack of paper, so we're going to click on that. What we're going to do is select merge down. And what that's going to do is flatten this whole entire image into one layer. And if we go into our group, you'll see it's created a pixel layer for us. And then we still have that original group that is editable above it. With that flattened group, what we want to do is select it. Make sure it's selected. It's the pixel layer. You can rename it if you want to by clicking on it and then going into the three-dot menu and changing it from pixel to something like flatten layer. And then hit OK. That way you're able to kind of like organize everything and see what you've created. So we want to make sure we're on the flatten layer. And then what we're going to do is on this right hand side in our studio functions, we're going to go to our filters, and we are going to select, and the filters look kind of like a filter. It's like a funnel looking icon. So we'll click on that icon, and then what we're going to do is select affine. And then you'll get these options that pop up at the bottom. What we want to make sure is our extend mode is wrap. And then we want to keep our scale for Y and X the exact same as it is from the original. But what we're going to change is our offset. We're going to offset 50% for our Y and 50% for our X. So we're going to click on this. And then we're going to change it to 50 for X. And then click on it again and change it to 50 for Y. And then you'll see all of your elements get pulled into the four corners. But what that means is that it leaves you this empty space, so we need to fill that up. So once you've done that, just click apply, and it'll apply the affine filter to your board. And then what we want to do is go back to our layers and then turn that group back on. You don't want to leave this as is, obviously, but what you do want to do is kind of play around with the elements. I would turn them all off by going into your group, selecting your down arrow, and then just uncheck marking all of the little elements so that you see what you're working with, and then you can turn them on as you go. The idea is to fill in this center piece as we go and just kind of utilize the original elements to fill in the blanks so that we can finalize our file. And again, you don't want your elements to go to the edges. You just want to fill in the center areas here. So I'm just going to turn each one on one by one and then move it and rotate it to fit where I'd like it to go within this final piece here. Once I'm done filling in my center pieces, I can just go back through and kind of refine as needed, but I think that this looks good the way I have everything set up here. I'm happy with this final piece. So what we're going to do is we're going to export this, and then we're going to see how it tiles on a new file. So what we want to do is select File, and then we're going to export this, and then we're going to export it as a PNG. And then you want to go in and update your file name. So you'll click on where it says file name, select that little A pen in the lower left corner, and then it'll give you your keyboard options. And then you can just delete what's already in there and then rename it something like floral tile. And then hit return, and then everything else can stay as is, and then hit OK, and then you want to save it somewhere where you can find it. I'm just going to save it in my Affinity photo file, and then hit save. And then I'm going to hit the back arrow so I can go back out into my gallery, and then I'm going to hit the plus icon again, and we're going to set up a new document. This time we're just going to create, since this is a 6x6 tile, we're just going to do a 12x18 file. Just so that we can see what it looks like when it's at its 100%, and then we can scale and resize to play around with what you would like it to look like, and then you can print it out for testing. So I'm going to select new document. I'm going to change my width to 12 inches, hit OK, and then my height to 18 inches, and then hit OK. And then what we're going to do is we don't have to worry about a transparent background. We want to make sure our orientation is portrait. Again, you can update your color from RGB 8 to 16 or CMYK. I'm going to just do CMYK because I'm going to print it out and I want to make sure my black color looks nice. My DPI should be 300 and then hit OK. So this is going to give us a big enough file that we can place this element in, and you'll be able to test it at 100% full size, but then you can also increase and decrease. And what we're going to do in order to do this is we are going to go to our rectangle tool, and we are going to create a rectangle across this file. And your rectangle maybe like have a color right now. Right now mine is gray, but you can change the color if you want to something else. I'm just going to change it to a blue so that it's easy for you to see the repeat. And then what we want to do is just make a copy of this. Click on the rectangle itself. You can click on the color to pull it back into the studio. Go to your 3-dot menu and then select duplicate. And then it's going to duplicate so that you have one on top of another. And then what we want to do though for this one is remove the color. So we'll go to our color options, click on the circle, and then under quick colors you should see like a white square with a line through it that's blue. That removes your color. And then what we want to do is fill it with a bitmap. So we're going to fill it with a file. So on the left hand side you'll see 6 icons down is your fill tool. So we're going to click on that, and this isn't our flood fill tool, not the color, it's the one right underneath. We're going to click on that and you'll see this little pop-up comes up. So what we're going to do is change our type from none to bitmap. Once we select bitmap, you'll get this pop-up that allows you to select a PNG or a bitmap file. So what we're going to select is we'll go to where we saved our PNG file of our tile. I'm going to go to Affinity Photo, and then we'll select floral tile. And then what you'll see is that it fills our file completely. So what you can do is you can utilize these little arms here to decrease, rotate, and increase or decrease your size. So this is what the print looks like. And then you can print it out and see what it looks like once you actually print it full bleed on any type of paper that you have. I have a printer that prints up to 13 by 19, so I'm able to print something that's 12 by 18. But if your printer only prints 8.5 by 11, I would suggest that you basically resize this to an 8.5 by 11 file and then see what your tile looks like within there. But this is what the tile looks like. You can't really easily see where the repeat is, and then of course you can adjust it as needed using the arms. You can rotate, increase size, decrease size, and I think it turned out pretty cute. So this is a fun, easy, and simple way to create a repeat in Affinity Photo. You can utilize, like I said, you can utilize the app to actually draw in and create your elements like I did with these, or you can create the elements in something like Procreate and then pull them in as well and create your repeat super simply. That's all I have for today. I hope you found this really helpful. I know I've received a bunch of asks in some of the comments in past videos that people are interested in seeing how my process works when I'm working on the iPad with Affinity Photo to create my repeat. I like it because it's super quick and simple, and the affine function makes things really, really fast. But this is just one of the ways that I create repeats. I hope you guys found this helpful. I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.